the middle. It is caught. Touchdown, Tampa Bay. He is sacked by Gerald McCoy.
And welcome in our very latest edition of The Panel. I'm TJ Rives from Buccaneers Radio and Buccaneers.com, and time to meet our panelists. First up, rookie in our midst. Yes, from 98.7 The Fan, Buck beat reporter. You also read him some on 98.7thefan.com here locally. Trevor DeGroot, how you feeling?
Very good, TJ. Thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
All right, we'll see if he feels the same way at the end. Veteran Pat Yasinskas, you read him on ESPN.com. He's been around the Buck beat for a while. Thank you for coming back and doing this again.
Always a pleasure.
Also with us, Buccaneer.com senior writer. You read him all the time. He's back again. Is it an esteemed panel, Scott Smith?
I think it's a distinguished panel this time around.
Distinguished this go around,
last week,
and we'll find out if that remains the case. So guys, the Chicago Bears game is where we'll begin from last week. Some good and obviously some not good enough in the end in a 21-13 loss. Pat, let's go to you first. After a victory in Washington, they were up 10-0 at halftime, the Buccaneers, unable to close the deal. Your thought looking back?
They dominated the first half. It was 10-0. It should have been probably 17-0. They squandered some opportunities. The third quarter, it was just a disaster. They had a couple turnovers, and that just changed the entire course of the game. It was a tough loss. I know that game meant a lot for Lovie Smith going back to Chicago, for Josh McCown going back to Chicago. That one hurt, and it hurt because they also had a chance at a 2-game winning streak, which maybe would have helped them turn the corner a little bit.
Pat, you talked about how that was 10-0 and dominant, and it went away so fast in the third quarter. Do you think it would have been different, guys, if there had been a running game at that point? Because you got that lead, and you can really control the clock a little bit better, but they weren't able to establish that, and therefore they put themselves in that position with the turnover, right?
No. Trevor, what do you think?
No, I mean, it was really, everyone will point to those two critical turnovers in the third quarter, and that was the boiling point. But you got to remember, the other two turnovers they had was the first one in the first quarter, where they were driving in the opening drive, and Chris Conte picks it off. And then also Vincent Jackson fumbling, albeit very controversial call by the officials for not reversing it. That was a big play too, because they were inside the 10-yard line when Vincent fumbled that football. So those are points that were wiped off the board for them in their favor, while Chicago may not have gotten points themselves. That's another 14 points potentially that was also erased.
Well, we saw in the Washington win how much turnovers dictated the beginning of the game, and that third quarter was dictated by the Buccaneers turning the ball over. I mean, it's a rather obvious point in the aftermath of the game. You cannot turn the ball over like that on the road.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's one of the fundamentals that Lovie Smith always preaches is don't turn the ball over, and they did 4 times, and that's not going to win you too many ball games.
There's not a lot of games where you can trace more directly to that fact that turnovers will lose you ball games, because they had one drive of over 50 yards in the whole game. The defense played magnificently, but they got 2 touchdowns on drives that started inside the 20. And that was the story of the game right there.
From a defensive standpoint, I mean, this is back-to-back games where we've seen the pass rush effective. We've seen them slow down, if not neutralize, the other team's offense. The Bears only had 68 yards of offense, I think, in the first half, only 200 in the entire game. Clearly, the defense is improving.
And that was without Levante David. Imagine if he gets implemented into that scheme, and he may have some impact plays as well. I mean, on the surface, if you just look at statistically 204 yards of total offense, I mean, that should be a no-brainer win. But again, turnovers early and late in that third quarter, throughout that whole third quarter, really had an impact, and it was a shortened field. Maybe a stop here or two to hold them to a field goal changes that, but it's really asking a lot of the defense to really hold in that situation.
That's a great point about Levante, and I wonder if that's an indication that the defenders are starting to get the scheme a little bit better. Because think about the fact that Danny Lansana was playing weak side, Ori Lemon was making his first NFL start ever, and yet the defense was still good, and maybe that's because they're starting to understand the scheme. That was the story earlier, right? People were telling us it takes a little while for a new team to get it, and now maybe that's an indication that they're getting it.
Yeah, and really for the last month or so, the defense has been playing pretty well. So I think it is a definite indication that they're picking it up.
Well, and for the Buccaneers, the next challenge will be the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll see how well they're picking it up. Guys, hang in there. We'll do that when we return on the panel in just a moment.